Hello, everyone. I am Dawn Westmoreland, hailing from Asheville, North Carolina, Western North Carolina, the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, coming from WPVM FM LP 103.7, the Voice of Asheville. I have a weekly show called the Empowered Whistleblower. It's about blowing the whistle on strategies to empower people to build resiliency muscles and also about courage. I'm so delighted, excited. I have met Therese Baptiste, who is living in Belgium now, but what a background she has. And we're going to talk about that because she originates from Trinidad. And she has had a lot of different experiences, growing up as she identifies as being Black. We're going to get into that also. And she has written a book called Empowering Social Growth. So with me being an HR person over 31 years, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, 31 years. Okay. I do a lot of consulting. A lot of people reach out to me. It's not for good stuff. It's usually because somebody's having problems in the workplace. So we're going to talk about social growth, sustainability. How do we empower our workplace? Therese, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Dawn, for having me on your show. It's my honor to be on your show.
Well, it's our honor to have you too. So let's get a little background on you. I shared that you grew up in Trinidad and now you're in Belgium.
Yeah, I'm the person, my first degree was maths and computer science. So I've always been in technology. And I always believe in living the way you preach. So I always believed that technology was my future. And thus I met my spouse online on match.com, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. 28 years ago on April the 1st, All Fools Day. And we are now married 27 years. And he's Belgian. I'm not Belgian, but I took nationality from Belgium. But yeah, so that's me in a nutshell. So I've lived in the Caribbean, in Canada when I did my graduate studies. I've lived in Geneva when I was a UN ambassador for my country. And now I reside again in Belgium.
Wow. Okay, I know this for a fact with my background in HR that there are not a lot of women in tech. And then there's not a lot of Black women or Blacks in tech. I've been informed that. I have a friend, LaRon Barton, who talks about, being a male, Black male in tech. What was it like being a tech person?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that with a black in tech because that was one of the issues I had when I first came to Belgium. Because I think when they saw my name, Therese Baptiste, they assumed a French person. And my technology, my master's in IT marketing and strategy, and all the technology work I had done, they assumed I was white. And that is why there was like a shock whenever I went in. Because just recently, like on LinkedIn, someone was saying, do not put your face on your CVs. And I say, yes, please put your picture on your CV. It saves me going into an interview where someone will be rejecting me because of my color. I'm like upfront. If you're going to reject me, you know it before you even bring me in. I am Black and I'm proud of being Black. Okay, and that's it. And it's very difficult because people don't expect it, but there are much more of us becoming in tech. And Trinidad has done a lot. We have a very strong technology background. I think some of the major social media companies, I'm not going to name one, is actually Trinidadian that is there. So we see a lot of Trinidad influence coming out into technology right now. Just last week, I was on a program that was looking at women in tech, and I was asked to be on that program because of someone who is in entrepreneurship, is in tech, is about ESG and sustainability. I'm like having my fingers in all the pots, but I believe that color should not bar you from what you can do, neither should gender.
Well said, well said. And I have to say that, oftentimes when I did consulting, unfortunately, a lot of the people that came to me were Black women. And I said it's unfortunate, as you said, and you nailed it. We should never be barred because of our gender or our color or such. And I'll share too that, while writing my workbook, Stand Up to Workplace Bullying and Discrimination, I interviewed a girl named April, and I have her permission to talk about the story. And she has Mansfield as her last name. And when she would go out to interview, here she grew up in Atlanta, they would be shocked. You're Black, you're Black. Well, of course I'm Black, and I'm like, oh my God, I would I would be devastated to hear that as an HR person, somebody already, oh my God, you're Black. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
That's nuts. Yeah. So
And the
you
thing is, Belgium tries, I say tries because Belgium is all about diversity and inclusion. And I recently worked at an institution that said it was all about diversity and inclusion, but I will say diversity was having me, the lone Black person amongst them. Inclusion, no, because people don't realize they come together. So you can't just bring people of different races, genders, sexualities on board. They need to be included in the decision making. And that has led me more to look at the whole aspect of social impact because I got interested in sustainability when I was a UN ambassador because I was appointed a member of the advisory panel for the United Nations Forum of Sustainability Standards. And I was like, great. And that is where I saw what we were trying to achieve and realized some of the rules that we were implementing were actually squeezing the smaller person out because for them to make all these changes, they couldn't afford it. So it was, and I see this still happening. We are creating all these rules and these regulations that in the end we may create a utopia for select few. So we're trying to create a planet to be sustainable, but for whom? Okay, we want everyone to change quickly. And a lot of the developing countries, the small farmers, are being affected because those who are the big conglomerates are the ones making the rules, the big countries are the ones making the rules without looking at the cost of it, cost benefit analysis. And it's very difficult. And they've created like there's greenwashing that we all know about. And now I think I see a lot of social washing. So the ESG, people are saying, oh, we are diverse, oh, we have inclusion, oh, we care about labor relations. Oh, we care about human rights. So that is what prompted me with the sustainability and my own experience of diversity and inclusion to really get on board and look at. I had a podcast. I started with a podcast and I would send small tidbits of my podcast to some of my family members to listen. And one said, it's really good, but if you really want to get word out too, put it in a book. So I then moved it into a book, and that's how I came up with the book, Empowering Social Growth.
Oh, let's talk about this book, Empowering Social Growth. Now, where can you find this book, Therese?
It's on Amazon, across all the platforms of Amazon. And of course, because again, I believe in sustainability, it's available as an ebook as well as a paperback. Because some people still want to feel the paper between their hands.
Yes. Yeah, some people are still tactile, but yeah, it is nice to be able to grab your Kindle or your iPad or another tablet and read a book on the go for sure. What is your book about?
Well, it was like, to me, I say it's one of the fascinating discoveries where you see the intricate and profound interplay between ESG, which is environmental, social, and governance factors, and the social impact. And throughout the book, I show you that if you really want to implement these initiatives, it's not to merely comply with ethical standards, but drive positive societal change. Okay, so I try to show that to people, and I see it sometimes as a little. I saw one. I got a reference, like someone reviewed my book, and they said it actually looked like a playbook for new companies to understand how they can implement ESG simply and do some of the foundation of it without necessarily all the buzzwords that people throw at it.
Okay, so ESG, Empowering Social Growth.
Yeah, that's where I
That's
took
the
the ESG. Yeah.
And I
Orange
did that
social
because
growth.
I was in the Air Force, and we have tons and tons and tons and tons of acronyms, and sometimes people need to be told what the acronyms. What inspired you to write the book?
Well, I've always been wanting to write a book because I come from a family of writers. Like, a lot of when I say writers, journalists. So they've been writing. I have uncle who was an editor of a major newspaper. My brother writes. And I've always liked writing. In school, I liked writing. My mother wanted me to work. And she says, writers don't make that much money work. So,
Oh,
but I wasn't, as I said, I was an academic. I love sharing knowledge. I never saw teaching as teaching. I show it as a way to disperse the knowledge that I was gifted to have. And therefore, writing this book was another way of trying to get this knowledge out there because I don't think there are many books or anyone is talking about the S of ESG. Everyone is focusing on the environment, but who are we creating this environment for? We, the people in the companies, they have to live it. And we talk about ESG and we have the SDGs, which again, I used to give guest lectures about that's not going to happen in 2030. They have too many with too many different breakdowns. That's another story. And what I'm saying, we have to be careful and we don't create, we say we want to get rid of poverty, which I said poverty will never go. There's always been poverty throughout. There are always different stages. What we can do is reduce the level. So
Yes.
when you, and what I'm trying to tell people is that we should aim for a planet of the future where the majority of us will survive, not just a planet of the future where only the rich and the well off can survive. So when we tell people things like, you must all drive electric cars, that's not being realistic. I was talking to a friend who recently decided to buy an electric car. We had a hybrid because my husband and I recognized, okay, we want to help, but we can't go fully electric because if you are accustomed driving long distances, if you don't live in a country, because like in Belgium, we go from Belgium to drive to Romania, you can't do that because you're going to run out of electricity along the route. And what about people who live in places with apartments? Where are they going to have their electric car to be plugged in while they go to bed? I mean, we make all these rules and we don't think of every single person.
Oh gosh, yes. And we shared before this interview, I was stationed in Belgium, but that was back in 1987. I was a very, very young Air Force troop. So
Wow.
I can just imagine what you're saying is trying to find that electricity. So what was it like as a Black woman? How were you treated when you were an ambassador? That must have
As an
been.
ambassador, there was not a problem because I was an ambassador in Geneva, where people go out of their way, I call it, to be extremely polite. So they're extremely polite, extremely diplomatic in everything they say. So, I mean, and I will always say, I'm not a diplomat. I call it as I see it. Okay. And there's actually quite a funny thing, John. I was once in my first WTO meeting in Geneva. I don't know if you know this, but do you know for something to be passed, at least back then, I hope they've changed, you had to be unanimous. All the countries had to agree. So I
Wow.
was in this meeting, and at the beginning, one country had put forward a proposal. The second country that spoke went against it. I turned to my assistant and I said, so should I leave? Because what's the point? We can't pass it. One person is against. And she's like, no, Your Excellency, because that's what they call you there. We have to, every country has to speak. And by the time it was our turn, it was after 11 at night. This thing started at 9 a.m. And when I stood up, I think my lack of diplomacy was showed up because I stood up and all eyes on me because it was my first official speech. And I looked towards the clock and everyone looked up because I'm looking at it and I go, wow, look at the time. I said, well, okay, I have a long thing here to read for you all from my country, but I'm aware all of you all have that copy on a CD because everyone had a copy on a CD, but they go and they read the entire 3 pages. I said, we support you. We hope for the best. I don't think it is going to happen. Thank you. And I sat down. And everyone followed me after that. And right after that meeting, as I was leaving, someone came and said the director general needed to see me the next day. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be sent home, right? And when I went to see him, he had my file in his hand and he said, Therese Baptiste Cornelis, because that was the name.
Yeah.
You are not a diplomat. Watch me. No, I'm not. He says, I love it. Can you join my committee? He says, because you look like someone who will get the work done. Because that's what I believe. We weren't there to just talk it out. Money is being spent when we're in the UN. It shouldn't be a talk shop. It should be a place of change. It should be a place to motivate people to help those who others are not helping. But I discovered it's just a little level of politics still again. But yeah. So I say I'm not a politician. I'm not a diplomat. I'm
That's
me.
it. Now I gotta ask because I remember our station owner, Davine Dial, and she's here in Asheville, North Carolina. She said to me, Dawn, I want you to interview strong women and show the world that, they're not all I'm gonna say the B as in boy, but
Yes.
I can't say the word because we're family oriented and community radio. But how do you feel women should be to be strong and resilient, empowering without, being that B word?
It is very difficult. I know because I have a sister and she saw me interacting with someone who really was trying to push my buttons. And I was still just smiling and stuff like that. And when it was finished, she said to me, how did you keep your temper in? I mean, they were literally trying to bring you down and you just smiled. And I said, I smiled. I sometimes picture myself attacking them, but I didn't. So that way I get my anger out of me. But the thing is, I
Yeah, I get
believe
that.
that work will show my value. And in the end, they would see who I am. I don't have to go and throw it at their faces. I don't have to become that arrogant person. I don't have to overshout them. I do believe that my performance and what I put out will show it. Because even now that I've written this book, Empowering Social Growth, some of those same people have written me and said, oh my God, your book is really good. You're really knowledgeable. Oh, yeah, I took my book to tell you this? Okay, fine. Not a problem. I can live with that.
Well, let me ask you this. This is something that some people are working on with their self-growth is humility. Can you be a strong woman or a strong man and be humble?
I think it's easier for a man to be humble and be strong because they would say, oh, he's a quiet spoken man. Many times when women try to be quiet and humble, we get walked over. So it's like a very, very ticklish, like walking a plank and one misstep and we're off. So I know sometimes someone will say, you need to be a little more reserved and pull back. Yeah, but how much can we pull back? The reason we are so upfront is because we've been kept down. Okay. And I'm proud of who I am. I'm not going to change my name and come up with some women go about changing their names. I've seen that some women they have a name that can be male or female. I mean, Therese is as female as it gets, and I am not apologizing for who I am. I don't dress in. I see sometimes some women I've seen on television, and I'm not calling names. One particular one, I remarked to my spouse, I said, I've never seen her not wear a pantsuit. And it's weird because, again, they say that, oh, to be accepted, we should wear a pantsuit and we should. No, I'm happy. I actually got into trouble once when I was a minister because they said I wore a skirt that was inch or two above my knee. And I was like, really? And I got this pushback from a feminist group who told me, oh, you should really wear it below your knee. It wasn't showing it. It was just above my knee. I had a longer jacket on. The aircon had broken down. There was an emergency in the hospital. I took off my jacket and I said I would help clear the hospital. And they said, Minister of Health shows her healthy knees. Yeah, okay.
Well, let me ask you this. As you work in these different leadership roles, being an ambassador, whether you're training, teaching, and such, do you feel that you get picked on more because you're evolving with your work, you're advancing? Do you feel like you get picked on more, that people want to keep you smaller?
Honestly, I do. Honestly, I do think that. I think if I could learn to be a wallflower, I might be more accepted. If I could pretend to be less intelligent, perhaps I could be accepted. But I come from a strong woman as well. My mother is a teacher, and my mother has never taught any of her children to be weak. So she's done a lot for herself. She got married young. She had her 4 kids. She did well. She and my father raised 4 beautiful children, and never once was my mother showing any weakness. And I'll never show weakness either.
You don't show weakness. Okay.
Well, I mean, I can be weak, but I try my best not to show it to the public. So I'll be honest. There'll be times, Dawn, when I would have been attacked, let's say at work. When I say attacked, not physically attacked, but again, we know the microaggressions and the mental. Because once I had on what you call a little bandeau I had bought in a store in Belgium that was multiple colored. And one of my senior managers came to me and said, oh, is that tribal headwear you're wearing from back home?
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my goodness me, right? And I'd smile and I bought, no, I bought it here. You just smile, you just let it fly. And I would come home and I would with my husband and he's like, okay, it's all out now, right? It's all out. And I do always abide by the countdown rule. Like if you feel you're going to say something before you utter it, I count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Of course, sometimes that count goes really fast that I try to count down. So I would not, because I say I don't want to attack the person, but the message that they are trying to give out and let
Of
them know
course.
perhaps it was delivered wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. What are the biggest traits that you can tell between Belgium workforce and American workforce? Are there any similarities? Are they really different today?
Well, in my experience, I've not lived in America, I've lived in Canada. And I think I know the Canadian workforce, and I have been to North Carolina for conferences.
Mhm.
With I think there's a lot more hierarchy in Belgium. There's more patriotic system in Belgium, which I find shocking. Because I mean, I even had this point when I don't have children with my spouse, and I found out should my spouse pass away, that Belgian law says that half of whatever he has goes to his sibling because I have no kids for him. And I was
Oh,
like, what the heck is that? And I went to my lawyer, and the lawyer said, well, you'll have to write something in to make and those kind of little interested. And in Belgium, there is a lot of, I don't see as much people enjoying their job. It's more like we work so that we can have money, so that we can go on holidays and enjoy. There is not that level of it. And I think it has to do a lot with their education system because they're not as competitive minded as you would see in America or Canada in my country, because they don't really push competition at school. And therefore, there is not competition at work either. And I think competition is healthy. In Trinidad and Tobago, we actually have to take exams to get into high school. We have to take exams in high school to get into university. And it's not like that in Belgium. You literally, when you graduate from high school, once you graduate, you can go to university. Even if you graduate with 50.5%, you can go to university. So then you end up with not people pushing, so you get a hypno like a cross match of people in a class,
mhm.
and sometimes some are motivated, some are not. And I see that translating into the workplace because I believe in competition. And in Belgium, they're only now starting to really enable entrepreneurship. When I first came here, I did not think it was being enabled. I considered Holland, Netherlands, to be an excellent place, but not so much in Belgium. In Belgium, it was much more go get a job and work for a company, as opposed to start your own business, because it was very restrictive. But rules are changing.
Rules
I'll
are,
give them.
yeah. What do you hope the reader gets out of your book?
I really hope that the reader realizes that there is a synergy that amplifies social capital and paves the way for inclusive growth, illustrating that when companies prioritize ESG criteria, they will be invested not just in operational enhancements, but in the very communities that sustain them. Okay, it's talking about being corporate smart, helping your communities. And I think that the interconnectedness will underscore the power and responsibility of businesses to shape a more equitable world. Okay, there are different aspects. And what I do in my book, I gave some case studies because I'm not going to pretend to be the guru of it. But what I am doing is directing you. And each chapter has 3 discussion questions to stimulate more talk. I'm hoping companies can use it to ask their staff members the questions. What do you think we are doing wrong? And stimulate them, give them the basic, the foundation, and then generate that inclusive decision making.
Mm-hmm. Now, we have a lot of diversity, quote, experts out there. I mean, I've worked in HR 31 years, and I've worked employee labor relations mostly, the last years and such. So I deal with a lot of behavioral issues and things. Do you think since this big growth in, I'll just call it diversity, okay, inclusion, are we getting better out there? Or is
I
it
no,
be
I'm
changed?
being quite honest. I think not, because we kind of missed the purpose of it. We suddenly, like, people. I remember listening to someone talking about their organization embracing diversity. And they said the way they embrace diversity, they have now formed groups, and they have formed groups of people who are transgender. They have groups of people who don't speak this language. They have groups of people who are female. They have, and that's not what it's about. Diversity, yes, is embracing all, but not putting them in silos. You just putting them back into silos and thinking that one person, and they said one person from each group can come and tell us what they want to. That's not what it's about. And therefore, at least I've seen this in America, and I could be wrong because I don't live there. What I have seen coming out of America many times, diversity went only looking at skin color and sexuality. And the whole diversity with mental diversity, with physical abilities, is not as prevalent. And diversity is about every single thing, not just about what you can physically see. So it's not about race, and it's not about fixing numbers. I had someone, one of my students was talking about they were happy that people were pushing that, let's say in Europe, that at least 10% of your employees, I'm just giving you a number, should be of another race. And he was like, yes, yeah. And I was like, really? You find things like that should be implemented? He says, yes, and that way we get a chance. And I was like, okay, but if you want to make it global, then that would have to apply to African countries. And he's like, yeah, and which means, so are you going to tell me now you're going to force African countries that 10% must be non-African? And he looked at me. Well, not Africa. I said, but then that's the problem when you come down with numbers and you try to assign all these numbers and these playbooks. It must, I have never been one to say give somebody a job purely because they're female. I said, if they're as good as the man and they have abilities, fine, but not just because of race, not just because of their sexual nature. No, that should not be, not because of gender. Give the best person the job. And that has always been my motto of looking at it. And that is what true diversity is, when we don't think about race, we don't think about gender, we don't think about abilities. We just see you as a human being.
You know, Therese, in the United States, you know, a lot of people are looking and embracing, you know, having a more diversified workplace. But what I have seen them do, and now this is in the US and we're talking, you know, legal matters, and I'm not an employment attorney, I'm an HR technician or a specialist, but I do know this for sure. A lot of times with good intentions, companies say, well, we need to hire more Black people, we need to hire, you know, more gay people, but that can get you in trouble for the person who is maybe considers themselves straight, you know, or a different race or something like that. So people have to be careful. As you said, pick the right people.
Yeah, it's
because they can
right.
do the job.
Yeah, it's not hire more people who are Black or who are gay. It's that to ensure when hiring their color, their gender, their sexuality, that does not factor. That's what it really means. That should not be a factor. But just to artificially say, I'm giving you that job because of your color, that's wrong. And the thing is, they don't realize that it's doing a disservice, I say to people, because I made a mention that, for instance, I was one of the black people in that institution, right? And what I noticed I felt it when we had to present ourselves to the public. I was there, but when you were making decisions, I was not asked to be part of the decision. I felt like literally a piece of meat that was being presented as representative, which was not true.
Yeah. Well, we are running out of time. We're down to less than a minute. Can you tell the listeners how they can contact you, find out about your book, where to get your book again?
It's on Amazon and all Amazon platforms, amazon.com.nl.fr. And you can always contact me at theresebaptiste.com. I make life simple. Okay, my email is tb@theresebaptiste.com.
I have the benefit of knowing how to spell your name. Do you mind spelling it out for our listeners?
Oh, I can. Therese, that's Therese Baptiste, Baptiste. So theresebaptiste.com, and I use it all over. It's on LinkedIn. I'm on most social medias. You might even find me on TikTok having fun, because I use that as stress release.
Oh, great. Therese, you're doing great things out there for the world. Thank you for empowering our listeners, and also out there empowering people through your books, through your training, through your speaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and to the listeners, stay empowered. We'll see you next week. My show airs every Tuesday, and 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or anytime you're listening.